I want to ask you, what do you do if your restaurant is failing? Like your restaurant used to attract tons of customers and they always left pleased, but something has changed and now business is falling off and it's becoming hard to pay the bills for the restaurant. Or what do you do if your school's football program, the team just can't seem to win? I mean, they used to have something of a thing going. I mean, they had a national title. They maybe even had a Heisman Trophy winner, but now they just can't seem to beat their way out of a wet paper bag. What do you do? Now, what do you do if your city is run down and your businesses are leaving and crime is on the increase and really your city has kind of become a punchline and nobody respects it anymore? What do you do? Well, what you do is you find a leader. Right? If your restaurant is failing, you bring in Gordon Ramsay and he assesses what's wrong and he fixes it, right? And if you're CU, you bring on Deion Sanders and he brings in all of his glitz and glamour to try and put you back on the right track and put your football program back on the map. If your city is run down, then maybe you elect Rudy Giuliani and he starts programs like the No Broken Windows program in your city to start reversing the effects of crime and starts cleaning up the city. And that's what you do, is you bring in a leader. I would like to impress on you, that's not what you do with your church. You don't find a... Just kidding. You do that too. But as we continue this week of looking at the second half of the tribulation, the final 3.5 years of this 7-year period in which God's judgments are unleashed on the world, we see that there's a leadership vacuum. The world has been through all of these amazing disasters, and they would think of them as natural disasters, but in fact, they're judgments from God. And so the world is pleading for its very survival. Of course, they're not turning to God, but they've experienced these wholesale horrors and widespread death. And the world is longing for someone who can provide relief and hope from all of the torment and anguish that they're going to be going through. You can sort of see that happening, can't you? And unfortunately, Satan has just the man to fit the bill. Last week in Revelation 12, we left off with Satan standing on the edge of the sea, and it is out of this sea that we meet the parody of the Prince of Peace. And I saw a beast rising out of the sea with 10 horns and 7 heads, with 10 diadems on its horns and blasphemous names on its heads. See, it's a parody of the Prince of Peace, and we'll look at this because Satan is beginning to form his unholy trinity, as we introduced a few weeks ago. The beast rises out of the sea, which, by the way, is the Bible's way of saying the representation of the Gentiles, the sea of humanity. In the midst of this crisis, for all of these people who don't love God and haven't loved God, who have actually begged at some points for the mountains to fall on them, someone comes along who has the appearance of being able to put everything right again and restore all things. And he comes onto the scene, and the people will be so ready for it that they're going to swallow it hook, line, and sinker, whatever his program is. Now, I know that I keep saying someone, but we should also look at this as maybe being something, because I don't think that the beast here is representative of just a man. John continually uses the neuter pronoun it for the beast. So I think this man, though, and I do think it is a man, is also representative of a global system, a global governmental empire, and it is what is symbolized by the imagery of heads and horns and diadems. Now, you may remember last week that we looked at that. We didn't really look at it. I told you we'd look at it this week. The same kinds of things are found with the dragon. And we didn't look at him, so we need to look at him today. What do these 7 heads and 10 horns mean? Well, again, we've been saying all along, let's let Scripture interpret Scripture. And fortunately, John gives us an interpretation chapter 17 of Revelation. In verse 8 of chapter 17, it says, "The beast that you saw was and is not, and is about to rise from the bottomless pit and go to destruction. And the dwellers on earth, whose names have not been written in the book of life from the foundation of the world, will marvel to see the beast, because it was and is not and is to come." And already you're going, huh? Say what? What is all this was and is not and is to come and is about to rise from the bottomless pit? What is all of that about? Well, the was and is about to rise has to do with the supposed resurrection that's going to happen, that Satan will appear to bring about in this Antichrist figure. Apparently, this Antichrist will appear to die, but will be restored. Now, I say appear because I think that's exactly what it is. Either he actually dies and appears to rise again, and it's appearance, not reality, or he appears to die and is still alive all along. Either way, he's not dead, or either way, he's not really who he says he is. But verse 3 of chapter 13, which is our passage, says, "One of its heads seemed to have a mortal wound, but its mortal wound was healed, and the whole earth marveled as they followed the beast." So this is the mortal wound that ultimately is the appearance of death, and that he is then restored again. Satan, in his work to produce this counterfeit Jesus, has to make it seem like he has the power of resurrection and life. And so this beast will appear to have this mortal wound, and he will appear to die. Verse 12 of our passage says that he was wounded by the sword and yet lived. So chapter 17 says he was alive, and then he appears to die, and so he is not. That's those two transitions there. And then Satan will make it appear that this world leader was assassinated and come back to life, and so he is to come, but he'll be different than the one who died. And I think maybe that means that there's something changed in terms of who he actually is. Maybe he is indwelt by a demonic force. Regardless, Satan does not have the power of life. We know that. That is expressly given only to God. And so he can only make something have the appearance of life. And since he is, after all, the father of lies, deep fakes are his specialty. And so either the death will be a deep fake, or the restoration to life will be a deep fake. Either way, it's a fake. Because the whole plan here for Satan is to make people think that they have the Messiah, that they think they want. But he'll be a counterfeit Jesus Christ, complete with counterfeit resurrection. Okay, so I told you we were going to talk about horns and heads and all of that kind of stuff. So go back to 17, chapter 17. Here's the interpretation of the 7 heads and the 10 horns. This calls for a mind of wisdom. The 7 heads are 7 mountains on which the woman is seated. They are also 7 kings, 5 of whom have fallen. One is, the other has not yet come, and when he does come, he must remain only a little while. As for the beast that was and is not, and it is an 8th, but it belongs to the 7, and it goes to destruction. And when you read it like that, it's like, again, I don't understand what's going on here. So very quickly, let me just point out, we talked about a woman last week. This is not the same woman. This is a very different woman. This is a prostitute, the new Babylon. And we take that to mean a false religion, a false world religion at the time of the Antichrist. We'll get back to that in a minute. But then this passage tells us the 7 heads represent 7 empires, 7 kingdoms. 5 of those empires have come and gone already. One still is, it says there in the passage. That's the 6th one, the 6th empire that was in power at the time of the writing of Revelation, which we believe has got to be Rome. And the 7th is this final empire with 10 horns. And the 10 horns that you saw are 10 kings who have not yet received royal power, but they are to receive authority as kings for 1 hour together with the beast. These are of one mind, and they hand over their power and authority to the beast. So this is an empire, it seems, that has 10 divisions, maybe a 10-nation pact that will come together and form this global empire. And the beast is going to rise up from within these 10 horns, leaders of this 10-nation empire. And they will all give over their authority to this beast. Now, I don't think that empire has come yet, although some people have said with, of course, the European Union Pact, this is it. Well, maybe. We'll see. Time will tell. It may not actually form until after the tribulation begins. Maybe the nations will come together and saying, we need to do something about all of these global catastrophes that are happening. Let's all come together and join forces together. Maybe that's the impetus that causes it. Regardless, it will be the avenue, this 10-nation empire will be the avenue that the beast, the Antichrist, uses to come to power. So let's go back to chapter 13. The beast rises up out of the sea. He's got 7 heads, 10 horns, and the beast that I saw was like a leopard, verse 2. Its feet were like a bear's, and its mouth was like a lion's mouth. And to it, the dragon gave his power and his throne and great authority. More stuff. What is all of this? Okay, this is an allusion to Daniel chapter 7. Daniel in chapter 7 has a vision of 4 beasts rising up. One like a lion with eagle's wings. One like a bear. One like a leopard. But the 4th beast was one with 10 horns. That sounds familiar, doesn't it? While Daniel's beasts are all separate, they separately represent 4 different empires, Babylon, Persia, Greece, and Rome. Now all of these beasts, all of these different 4, are unified together into one. And what I think that means is that all of the distinctions that we would make between the leadership of those 4 different countries are actually unified in one person. The 4 beasts of Daniel are now one beast. And what I think that means is that this leader will have the best and the worst traits of all the great leaders, human leaders of history. The Antichrist will combine the best and worst of Nebuchadnezzar, for instance, Babylon, the best and worst of Cyrus, the leader of Medo-Persia, the best and worst of Alexander the Great, the best and worst of Caesar Augustus, the best and worst of all of the world leaders that maybe we could even contemplate, Charlemagne and Napoleon and Victoria and Hitler. And you can see how attractive that would be to a leadership-starved world. They'll look at that and they'll go, aha, here's someone who can rescue us. Here's one who can bring us out of this miry clay. Do you see how they're going to use Scripture for their own ends? And so here's this man with all the qualities that we need to lead us into our own glorious future. This is him. Let's put him in power because he's going to be captivating. He's going to be spellbinding and resplendent from the world's perspective. There's nothing on him he's not going to come to power and go, hey guys, I'm the Antichrist. He's not going to do that. And so verse 4, they worship the dragon, for he had given his authority to the beast. And they worshiped the beast, saying, who is like the beast? And who can fight against it? Now, if I'd been smart, I would have divided this up into about 8 different sermons, and we would have ended there, and then we would have been able to end on a note of hope, because we know the answer to that question.